let you know that this is being recorded. Everyone who registered will get a follow-up email with a link to the recording. And if there are any other documents or whatever that anyone wants to share, we'll add that to it as well. So please keep your microphone muted. And with that, I would like to introduce our panelists, Patrick Wallace and Tricia Thomas and David Kissinger. And then our favorite, Emily Horn, will be our moderator.
Yay. Thank you, Peggy. Right before I came on, it told me my internet is unstable. Exactly what you want to see before you're moderating a panel. So you will all let me know if I start sounding weird or start freezing. Welcome to everyone here. I think this is a topic that we can never really talk about and strategize enough about, which is really building that leadership pipeline and getting the right people with the right training in the right positions to lead the organization. And I know you three, Patrick, David, and Tricia, are exceptionally good, and your associations have been really strategic, I think, in how you've built that. And so I'm excited to talk to you about some of your strategies. So let's just talk real general first. I'll ask Patrick this first. Who would you say is responsible for recruiting new leadership?
Our goal is to get everyone who's in leadership now to replace themselves. So if that's their goal, they know what the job description is, they know what the time commitments are, and they hopefully will know people's personalities that might suit that particular committee. So for them to bring someone on as a co-chair, chairperson-elect, those sorts of things, and start working with them, training them, and bringing them in.
So has that ever been I could see the benefits of that, obviously, but has that ever created any issues with maybe the same offices, or people bringing in their own company, agents or something, where there's
yes,
it's too much of the same people?
It has, and we had a situation where the committee chair wanted to be a committee of one, and so that's not very collaborative, and so it's hard to train somebody if there's nobody there to train. And he did a really good job, but that's still a problem.
And Tricia, who would you say is responsible for recruiting new leadership?
Everybody.
I have this feeling you were going to say that.
Yeah. It's not just the board of directors; it's also the staff. So I think we had the most new leaders come in when we had a staff person who's since retired, who would go to all of our events, go to all the marketing meetings. She was a staff liaison for a number of committees, and she was always looking for who speaks up, what kind of questions do they ask, what a good fit would they be, and then she would sort of channel them to the appropriate staff liaison, staff committee chair and vice chair, and do outreach with them. So we were constantly greening our committees because she just loved doing this. It was something that she started doing on her own. No one asked her to do it. And then it was clear that she was getting to a point where she was planning on retiring. So we institutionalized it, and we created a leadership development committee. And because there's so many different parts, right? There's David, you'd be so great on our local government relations committee because I know that I see you at all the city council meetings. And David says, oh, okay. And then it just dies. So what David needs is, how about the LGR chair contact you, or the staff liaison? Come and visit, come and sit in on a meeting, and then follow up. Hey, David, how'd you like the meeting? Was that right? Well, no, I was more involved in political activity. Well, we have a political activities committee. I'll put you in touch with the chair. So I think there's the ask, and then there's the follow through. And without the follow through, like maybe you get 10% of the people that you ask. the other thing is, I think you kind of nailed it when you said, well, if you have like board members asking, don't they tend to ask people who from the same companies, how about who look like themselves? So we try and we do demographics on our leadership, and we have 43% Caucasian, and then the rest is a multitude of other different groups. And so we try and intentionally go and look for people in those areas. So and then it happens organically. That's the last part.
So and let me just ask you one follow-up, and then I'm going to ask David his methods. But with the leadership development committee, are those volunteer realtors and a staff person?
Yep.
Just like any other committee potential. So those committee members are engaged in that follow-up, not the staff person.
Correct.
And I think that's a good model for any smaller associations too. So it's like, even if you don't have a lot of staff, or that awesome staff person you mentioned, Trisha, who actually was like a recruiter out there at your meeting, looking and identifying the talent, you can still do that if you have those right committee members and that are really passionate. I think that's important about that leadership development and really looking for the right people and the diversity that we need. That's even a good model for small associations. So I love that. Okay, David, who is responsible at your association? Is it just you? Is you alone?
Yes, just little on me. And I said, no, actually, I think Trisha is spot on. It is pretty much everybody. I especially though, like to narrow it down and break it into chunks. I put it on the board frequently, and the committee chairs. I tell them all the time. I'm constantly like, find out, like, we need to recruit people. Here's how and here's why. This is your job as a board member. It's my job as an AE. It is on the staff's job, but remember how to do this. And I tell them at the beginning of every year, the new board, they say, who is going to be sitting in your chair in 5 years? Do we know who that person is? If we're going to be an ongoing concern in the industry and have a strong industry, we need to know or have a good idea who that answer is. So then I also like to look out for certain people who I know are extra good at it, and maybe we'll get into this in some depth a little bit later. But there are some members who are maybe more adept or just more natural at it than others. Some members are very good at twisting arms, which is a fantastic skill to have, the polite way to do that. And some people, one of the very best, actually the best communications tool that we have is one agent talking to another agent. We all hit the tap on the shoulder, right? So the shoulder tap, when one agent goes up to someone else and says, you know what, you need to be on this committee. You need to be on our LGR committee. It's meeting next Tuesday morning, so just go. And there's a few that do that. My board treasurer this year is very good at tapping people on the shoulder and has lined up many people, including, a few past presidents and a few upcoming presidents who are going to do there. So it's a really great skill. So all of the, the web communications and email marketing, all that in the world is not as good as one agent talking to another.
Excellent. Let's talk about onboarding new people, because I think we alluded a little bit to it, and that follow through that Trisha was talking about, but I think there's an onboarding that most associations, I would guess, don't do it intentionally or don't have a formal process for that. But I do think with onboarding, like thinking of a new employee, having a very specific plan to get them acquainted and set them up for success, I think really gets them off on the right foot, and they have a better chance of really integrating and being successful into the organization. So similarly, in the leadership side, how do you guys do that well? And what have you seen that works and what hasn't been successful? And anyone can jump in. David, you want to start?
Yeah, so one of the best onboarding things we do is, again, it's like the new board orientation, the first meeting of the year in January. It's a new orientation, which basically is just me politely berating them. We kind of go over a whole bunch of stuff, but there are key things. One of the most important things is apparent authority, right? Like, who are you and what is the job you are doing? And, what does it mean to have this job? What does it mean when you pipe in and say something? You are speaking with a certain level of authority. So we make a big deal out about that. I ask people, I've begged this of my committee members for years, many years, saying, those of you who are new, if you haven't done this before, if you're going to say like, you know, I'm the new guy or I'm the new gal, I'm just going to sit back in the corner and keep my mouth shut because all these other people are so much smarter than me. They've done this forever. I'm going to say something dumb and they're going to smack me in the corner. And I've seen that happen. It does happen. You all know it does happen in your committees as well, not just the board. So I tell them, I say, please, you guys, look at, if you are afraid of making a mistake, you will make a mistake. I promise you that I will make many, many mistakes. So just be ready. It's okay. It's like learning a language. This is the only way or the very best way to learn how things is. Sometimes we're going to say something wrong or speak a little out of school and we're going to learn to move on. And those of you in the room who are veterans and who know this and, you know, have a little grace and just be mindful that you were in that seat once too. You were new ones too. You made plenty of your own mistakes, and just kind of be helpful rather than sort of smack them upside the head and say, no, it's the dumbest thing I ever heard. There are better ways that we can all sit on the same team and help each other out. And just a few other things I do. One of them is that public speaking is a very important deal for me, and you know, public relations. But we actually have a PR policy about who can and cannot talk to the media. Basically, the only people who are allowed to talk to the media are me and whoever the president is. And I know that both C.A.R. and M.A.R. do public speaking programs, and sometimes I do a little bit on the side. There is no amount of money that is too much money to pay for a good public speaking instructor or a good training session. It's so important. And I've had presidents that can't say anything, and I have presidents that can speak on the fly with no notes at all. And it's a blessing to have that ability to take care of that.
Yes, so many different, yes, you get a lot of different skill sets and you have to work with them. Some are stronger than others, and public speaking is such an important one. So I think, like you said, David, the new board orientation is such a wonderful opportunity to set the tone for the year. And I love how you create that, you know, that safety net for them, that mistakes, and we want your participation. What other kind of onboarding techniques, Patrick and Tricia, do you do to make sure everyone is really set up for success as a new director or committee member or chair?
So we start after the elections, which we do mid-year. We will have a leadership networking event in October, and we bring in all of the, not just the new board of directors, but also the current board, because it's a way of saying thank you to them, and also the current and the incoming chairs and the vice chairs. And because I think, particularly for new people, we want them to connect with someone who has some experience. After that, we will assign the new directors a mentor, and who's currently on the board. So, you know, when they're afraid to say, oh, I saw this in the agenda, but I didn't want to ask because I didn't want to look dumb, they call up their mentor, and the mentor can guide them on, well, you know, maybe this is how you approach it, or here, let's call a staff person and get more information. So I think that, you know, it's only as good as the mentor. And most years it's good. Some years we've had some real duds. And then we just assign, we'll give them the option, do you want a mentor the second year? And they can get a mentor the second year, but that's very seldom that happens. We also do that with new C.A.R. directors. They also get a mentor. And we have a C.A.R. director and training program. So we do that networking event, and it's like a summer camp event. I mean, it's set with alcohol. It's actually maybe in summer camp there was alcohol.
I don't know where you went, but
there's games like we went to a place called Debauchery last year, and it was bocce ball courts and axe throwing and a bunch of other games, and they had a blast. And then there's a gift for them from the incoming president, just like a little thank you gift to say, you know, welcome, we appreciate everything that you're doing. So we want to delight them. We want them to feel appreciated, and we want to have them feel like they belong. And I think that helps set the tone. And then in January, we do a combined board of directors meeting and leadership summit. So it's a day and a half, and the first day is training, and then the first day and a half is training, and then the last part of the second day is the actual board meeting. And so we do the, you know, roles and responsibilities. We do something called True Colors, which is a personality. It's a fun personality training in communications and conflict navigation and team building, so that they can bond with each other and know their strengths and know their weaknesses and others' strengths and weaknesses. So there's some people skills, there's the, you know, the dry roles and responsibilities, there's the antitrust, there's all the stuff that you guys do, but we try and blend it in at the beginning of the year, because we found when we did it in the previous October, everyone forgot by the time they sat at the board table. They're like, oh, what are we doing here? So we start the year off with that. So I think that's it. It's mentoring, the networking event, and then the leadership summit / board.
It sounds like you're mixing a lot of important elements into that time frame, which is like creating that community and belonging. I really like that, and I think it encourages them to build relationships. And we all know we work better and more successfully if we have connection with the other people in our team and have true relationships and trust. And I think that breeds that, I would assume. They're getting to know each other in a different way and personally, and that changes the game, I think, when you work as a team.
So I think the worst thing for leadership is when you have that toxic person on your board. And
yeah, what do you do with them? How do you do that?
I think you know what, you love them to death. I mean, you include them, you embrace them. You know, if you're not going to change them, but if they feel more of a sense of community, they're less likely to want to destroy it. But you
feel more ownership. Yeah.
I mean, it's not 100% proof against bad behavior, but I think it helps. I think sometimes I've seen really troublemaking people become some of our best advocates and supporters and recruiters of new leadership.
Yeah, when it's not like a them against us, or, you know, this fractured situation, and bring it together. That's the goal. And I think all these practices, you know, help foster that. It's not, like you said, it's not foolproof. Patrick, what are your secrets to onboarding? How do you get everyone set up?
Well, okay. So one of the things that we started 3 years ago was a leadership academy, which was modeled on the NAR NARLA. And for the first year, to make sure that we had a full house, we made the entire board of directors go through the leadership academy so that we could kind of work out the bugs and see what worked and what didn't work. And so one of the things, now we're in our third year, one of the things is that we're going to put in policy and procedures is that before you can be elected to the board of directors, you have to go through the leadership academy. So you have some of the basics down. So that's what we do. That's what we've already put into place. As far as the board of directors themselves, at the first meeting in January, we have our board attorney come in and kind of go through fiduciary responsibilities and liability and insurance and those sorts of things, kind of more of the nuts and bolts. We also have an orientation for our committees and our councils, because our structure is a little bit different than a lot of associations, in the sense that we have 6 different marketing areas. So we have 6 different councils, which is kind of like running 6 smaller associations. So the leadership of each council, which is the chairperson, co-chair, and those people, along with all of our committee chairs and committee members, so that it's not just the leadership, it's everybody who sits on the committee is invited to an orientation in January. And then we also, of course, with our region, have our C.A.R. director orientation, usually in January also.
Awesome. So you all do a lot in that area, and I want to switch gears a little bit to the governance side of the selection of board members in particular. So I know typically there's a nominating committee, and a lot of associations structure that a little differently. And I think it's important to hear how you all do that, or how your bylaws work, or how your practices work for that, because, you know, I think this has come up, especially in the diversity and inclusion vein, that we want to make sure that our policies and governance is set up for fostering a diverse group of people to serve in those capacities and not be exclusionary. So David, you want to talk about like the role of the nominating committee and if you've made any changes over the years to that structure?
Yeah, our nominating committee mostly adheres to the C.A.R., what's spelled out in the C.A.R. model bylaws, or a few differences that we're actually going to smooth out. I will just make a confession here with due respect to the model bylaws and the attorneys that are keeping it alive and well. I'm just not a fan of nominating committees just as a concept. I struggle with them mostly because it does happen sometimes that there may not be a lot of transparency, and it may, and I'm not saying it does, but it may create we're already kind of fighting the occasional perception among the members that like, oh, well, they're just sort of these, insider elitists and they don't really know what's going on and they're too busy and I'm not invited to all their cool parties and stuff, So I've heard that various versions of that perception for many years. I'm sure a number of you have as well. And so, we try to position our nominating committee to be as transparent as possible. And so we make a big deal in our communications for our annual election, which happens, in between May and July, that we say, the nominating committee is going to release a slate. It is a slate and you can vote for the slate or not. And if you want to run, for a seat on the board, you're eligible, but you're not on the slate. Here's a process that you can follow. And we'll help describe to you what that process is, and we'll kind of be really super clear with everybody. We're very fair with everybody as how you can find your way onto the ballot outside of the slate. As has happened, this actually happened last year and the previous year, where if there's more than one person, so there's a competitive seat, meaning that there are candidates that are not on the slate, that we treat them all equally. I'm not going to be like, oh, here's the slate, and then here's a few other random, candidates over there. So we treat them all as equally possible and kind of allow for that transparency. And also one more thing is we require all the candidates to go out and to, we have weekly town halls, we have member meetings to, communicate, to publish a statement, to introduce themselves to the members and say, hi, I'm an agent, I'm a member of the association, I'm running for the board. Even if they're running unopposed, I ask them to say, please go out, introduce yourself, ask for their vote, thank them for their participation, give the larger membership some sense of ownership, and kind of a reminder as to why we're here.
Awesome. Patrick, what's the role of your nominating committee? Is it similar or different to what they've described?
Well, we don't have a nominating committee. We actually are talking about possibly putting one together and looking at different models. But the way we're structured with all of our 6 different areas, what we put into place, and now, gosh, it's been 25 years, I guess. We have 5 at-large directors. And they rotate. That's 2-year terms, and you can be on for two-year terms before you have to take 1 year off. So it rotates. So every year we're voting for either 2 or 3 at-large directors to fill those positions. The rest of the positions are appointed by the 6 local councils, and the number of positions that they're given is based on their size. Because some of them are, 100, 150 members, and some of them are 600 or 700 members. So we right now have 16 people on our board of directors, which actually sounds like a lot, but it's actually worked pretty well for us.
So yeah, you're reminding me, you have a very different structure in that you have those councils, and so yes. Meeting all of their needs and engagement must look very different, obviously.
It actually has worked pretty well, because then you have somebody representing that area. And it's like, hey, did you forget us? And during the board of directors meetings, we have reports from the 6 different councils. And it's like, don't forget about our fundraiser coming up, or our picnic that's coming up, which means we have a lot of events. And I'm a very, very busy person.
Yeah,
but it's good. It's good. I love it. I'm not complaining.
So geographically, you have really good representation.
Yeah, we do, and we cover 2 counties. So geographically, we cover a lot of territory.
And Tricia, you want to add anything regarding the nominating committee?
Yeah, we just went for bylaws change. So what we used to do is different from what we will be doing beginning next year. It's not called a nominating committee. We've called it the Leadership Evaluating and Selection Committee. So one of the hats that they have worn for many years was nominating, which was vetting the eligibility, not the quality of candidates. So here's what you have to do. Fog a mirror. You're eligible. Off you go. So that has changed. Now it's going to be more like selecting a slate and doing interviews of all of the candidates, putting them on a slate. We had districts and we got rid of the districts. Well, the members, I should say, voted to get rid of the districts. Because what we were finding was when we divided up our region into its 4 districts and then 1 at large, it actually discouraged people from running, because you'd have someone who was super well-known or popular in a particular district, and they would get elected for their 3 consecutive 2-year terms, 6-year, they take a little break and then they come right back again. So we just made everything at large. As I mentioned, we have a very diverse community and we wanted to give more opportunities. So instead of limiting, like one district has 1 director, so it's going to be that most important, most popular person. We wanted to say, no, we're running at large. So we'll see how it works. But I think having a nominating purpose and creating a slate helps give you more opportunity to bring in more diverse candidates.
Absolutely. And so you'll have to let us know how your new process goes. We'll have to have an update.
I'm still here next year.
Don't say things like that. Yeah, this might put you under, or it might be the best. And back to David's point about the bylaws, I think being the model bylaws rather, being kind of the same since the beginning of time, perhaps. I think there's lots of room for improvement and consideration to new guidelines based on our, the world we live in. So I do think that the model bylaws have been, the same way for a long time, and it's probably a good time for all of us to look at that. I know Farah Wilder, our chief DEI officer, has brought that up a few times from a diversity aspect, and so that might be an important thing to do. Just staying on governance for a minute and then we'll move on. I just want to talk about term limits, because I know as a former AE myself, this was always a sticking point, because it's kind of like the board, the directors who usually are really happy to be on the board and involved, because that's why they're there, hopefully. It's hard to get any changes on if you don't have term limits. I know I've been in the situation where trying to get them to approve term limits, or at least, have some break where it's not the same people being able to run again and again, and not giving that, giving some opportunity for newbies to come in. That's been hard because they're kind of voting themselves off the island. So I'm just wondering, Patrick, I'll just start with you. What does your term limits look like? And has that ever been an issue with like retreads or I call them recycled? I say that kindly, but recycled leadership.
Well, yeah. Okay. So we have they're 2-year terms. You can be on for 2-year terms. Now, on the board of directors, if you get elected in your 4th year as president-elect, you actually are going to be on for 7 years, because you're president-elect in your 5th year, president in your 6th year, immediate past president in your 7th year. Yeah, we do get, I'm a perfect example of a retread. I mean, when I was I'm still technically a realtor, but when I was in the trenches, I was on the board of directors a lot, off and on over the years, and I was president 3 times. I guess I was on the 10-year plan. Every 10 years, they'd bring me back. I'm not exactly sure what that was all about. But I think now being an AE, and in retrospect, I think it's a terrible idea to have retreads. I think I did an okay job, but they really should have had some fresh faces and some new blood, new ideas. And anyway, retreads are, I think, just a bad idea. But when we were a smaller board, it was more of an issue. Now that we're over 3,000 members, it's not as much of an issue because you have more people to tap on the shoulder.
And I was looking at our president symposium that C.A.R. puts on next month. We have our registration list, and I was just perusing that, and there were a lot of familiar presidents coming in. So I do know that this, and sometimes it's not just about the members, protecting their own position and wanting to control the board. Sometimes, and a lot of times, AEs and this don't get they're not able to recruit new people, or no one wants to do it. And so they beg maybe that past president from 10 years ago to come back. So I think this is also partly a result of not having a more intentional, leadership development or pipeline, but it takes time and resources to do that. So Tricia, do you want to, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just let me just interject one little thing. The 2020 presidents and the 2021 presidents really feel cheated, and they all keep saying, I want to come back, but it's like, no, you kind of did your thing, and I really encourage them to do other things and not try to come back.
Yes, and after, I have one more question after this. I want to talk about finished term limits, but then I want to talk about past presidents and how to handle past presidents that don't want to move on. Okay, Tricia, do you want to add anything to term limits?
We do have term limits, and it's 3 2-year terms. So that's a long time to be on the board of directors. But I think it's interesting to talk about what is the cause of having retreads or renewed
seasoned. I like to use the word
leadership. I wish there was another word for it. And I think it's something that you hit on the head, and it's that we don't have enough new treads coming in. We don't have enough new people who are engaged. And so we got to focus on why is that. Some of it is market driven. Some of it is, I think people don't want to run and lose. I've heard that a lot. Like, why would I put all this effort into running and then embarrass myself by losing? Because now I've got to be doing business with these people and they're going to see me as a loser. So I've heard that a couple of times. I think that the other is, oh, it's so much hard work. And if you're going to be president of the association or an officer on the board, it means you're not doing any business, or you won't have time to do business. So I think that the messaging that current leadership gives to whenever they go out and speak, we say, tell them how much you've learned, tell them how much you've grown. The worst thing we can hear is come October, oh my God, I'm so looking forward to the end of this year so I can get back to business. I get to retire from years and years of service. Well, that's a terrible message to be giving out. So we encourage them, tell people what you've learned and how your business has grown and how your network has grown and how great of an experience this has been. Because people want to belong to something that's fun and that's going to benefit them. So changing the narrative, I think, and the perspective of what leadership means will help encourage those new treads coming in.
Absolutely. I think that modeling that behavior and narrative is really important for those who are longtime respected leadership. David, term limits for you?
Yeah, so our term limits are the same. They're a little bit stricter. They're actually 5 years. And so you can either have 2 terms on the board, or you can have 1 term on the board plus the cycle of president, the president-elect, president, past president, and then you have to take a year off before you come back. So that does kind of push some of the retreads out. They may choose to come back or not, and that's just kind of, sorry. And that's just kind of, sorry, I had to push a sleeping cat off my lap before you
I figured it was an animal of some sort.
Yeah. Yes, yeah, occupational hazard from working from home. So the question is about retreads. I think one of the reasons why retreads come back is because the job is fun. For a certain kind of individual, it's cool, it's fun, it's very high profile, it's visible, it's a leadership. By definition, you're showing leadership, you're making decisions, you're influencing the industry, you get to travel, we get to do all those sorts of cool things. And it's really enjoyable. And some people like it more than doing business. I've sat on more than a few committees where there have been agents that haven't closed an escrow in 12 months. And they seem to have no grief about it, So we don't at the board level, and I push back against some of my board members that try to call for this, but we don't really look at production levels of our agents to determine how viable they are in a leadership role. If it's a personal decision, do you want to sell houses? Do you want to sit on a committee? Do you want to do both? It's entirely on you, And so I only just ask them to say, please don't burn out, because if you're burned out, then everybody loses. You leave the industry, I lose a volunteer, and I have to grovel for somebody else again. One of the ways we also get around that is we talk very openly, and we teach the idea to have some humility, in the sense that I think, I'm sorry, I forgot who mentioned it before, the idea of replacing yourself. Like you will be here in this position for a year, whatever your term is, and then you will graciously step aside and someone else will come in. You can come back later if you want, or you can, be a kingmaker and get other people to go and be a part of it. One time, many years ago, as a GAD, I was giving a speech at a RE/MAX office in Torrance, and there were more than 50 people in the room, and a gentleman raised his hand and asked a question. I didn't recognize him. He said, well, a few years ago, I was the chair of CREPAC. And I looked at him. I still don't know who he is. And I finally got his name, and I couldn't figure out who he was. And he basically said, yeah, I chaired CREPAC, as you know, it's a very influential, powerful committee in C.A.R. And then he's like, then I'm done. And now I'm just hanging out and I'm selling houses. I'm running my business. And that was just his thing. So some people want to stick around. Other people are happy to do their time and move on and then do something else. And so I think ingraining that into the culture by just long conversations and repeated conversation, I think helps clear the way. So you do want to have a balance of repeat, members and new ones coming in.
Yeah. I'm gonna switch gears to C.A.R. director leadership, the state level, really quick. And then anyone who has questions, like I said in the chat, or if you want to ask, raise your hand, please feel free. Because I find, and kind of something you said, David, kind of struck a chord, is that whole production and not even the production numbers, but those who are really engaged in the transactions or management of agents and really in the field, versus maybe someone who's more on the retired side or just doing a few deals, a year. And in terms of leadership positions, and I think at C.A.R. we've been talking a lot about, are we being intentional enough in terms of getting the right people at the board table? And this goes for the state level and the local level. We're talking a lot about recruitment and identifying passions, and that's great, or people who will just say yes. A lot of times, like we said, like sometimes you just need a body, you need someone that will say yes, and that might be a retread. But I think, I just wonder, and sometimes I know you have these moments at the board table or at the committee meeting where you're going, they're just making a decision that's not in the best interest of the members, and sometimes I think it's lacking that, that perspective of really being in the trenches and what the members need because they're there. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, are there some changes at both the state and local level? But I'm more interested to know what you think about how we select C.A.R. directors, which is very, it's really open-ended for the locals to do, and to select whoever you deem appropriate. Should we be more intentional with who we're selecting to make these big policy decisions for organized real estate in California? I mean, I know this could be controversial, but I think it's an important discussion, because I think we've done it a certain way a long time, and I don't know that that's the best way, personally.
Can I jump in on that, Emily? Is that okay?
Yeah.
So I still would struggle with the idea of basically judging an agent's viability based on production, especially in a climate like ours where there is so little inventory. There's just not a lot of stuff out there, and you can, you can go all over the place and really work hard and not do, it's just, there are different factors that contribute to an agent's business success or not. I think one thing that may help is to really enforce the diversity of the body, of the membership body, and diversity. Are you from a large broker, a small broker, a medium broker? Have you been in the business for 2 years, for 18 years? Do you do a lot of multifamily, without looking at your production level, or do you have expertise in a certain area? Maybe we can use a factor like, do you have, certain designations that shows what kind of training you've gotten? What geographic, are you from an urban area, rural, suburban? So those kinds of things may be helpful. It's also helpful to know your membership, what the makeup is your membership. Like, do some research on who your members are. And I'll just throw you a quick example of mine. We have a little more than 1,700 members now. of those 1,700 members, 50% of them are in the top 30 brokerages. Out of 450 brokerages, 30 of them have 50% of my members, which tells you a lot of things. One of which is that tells you that the vast majority, actually I think nearly 90% of my brokers have 10 agents or less. And so that's a very difficult constituency to communicate with. And so you really need multiple tactics of how you're going to reach them. So I always want to try to get my hands on who are those brokers. You know, they don't have the time or the bandwidth or the interest getting involved in board affairs and still, but they may benefit from us and we need to hear from them. So I think, you know, pushing that kind of diversity might be, I don't know if Emily, that answered your question, that might be one tool of many.
Yeah, I don't think there's an answer. I think those comments are really helpful. And I was just interested in your perspective, and I think really on point. Trisha, Patrick, do you want to chime in here?
So we've changed how we send C.A.R. directors because I think it was, oh, you're interested? Sure, we'll send you. We got a number of spaces available. Off you go. But when we're doing our strategic planning this year, a few weeks ago, we took at some of our long range strategies, and they had to do with changing policy at the state level. And I mean legislatively. And we realized, you know, we're not as strong a voice as C.A.R. is, or nor will we ever be as strong as a voice. And so we started thinking, well, we're sending people to C.A.R. How are we connecting who we send to what strategic goals we would like to see? And so we're going to be more intentional in how we send directors moving forward. We started a few years ago doing interviews. And so there's a questionnaire, and we ask them some of the questions that David mentioned, so we can understand, do they have designations? What committees are they served on at C.A.R. if they're continuing? What are they served on at the local association? Why do they want to be a C.A.R. director? But I think there are more questions that we could be asking. So we'll be sending them our strategic goals moving forward to anyone who's interested in applying. And then we're going to ask them, what committees do you want to sit on? Like, why? Are you supportive of this strategic goal? Because hopefully you'll be voting on it by the time it gets to the floor at C.A.R. So a C.A.R. director has their fiduciary to C.A.R. because they're a director of C.A.R. However, what's the point of sending someone if they're not representing the agents in the field?
Absolutely.
And what the association sees that will help their professionalism and productivity and profitability. So we're trying to create that nexus so that the people we send will be in alignment with what our goals and our values are, and hopefully take that up the food chain.
I think that's really unique connection, or like the dots you've connected from your strategic plan and state director leadership. I think that's really a unique concept that makes a lot of sense, but I don't think a lot of people are doing it. I really like that. Patrick, I saw you writing notes maybe.
Whenever Trisha talks, I always write notes. She's my mentor, whether she knows it or not. I love
or whether
her.
She's agreed to that or not.
Yeah. She hasn't agreed to it, but that's okay.
Okay.
As far as our, I love her plan though. As far as our C.A.R. directors, and I don't know how everybody else does it. I know that there's a lot of different ways to do it. Our president-elect picks the C.A.R. directors for their year as president. So what they do is they put together a slate, and then it's approved by the board of directors or tweaked by the board of directors or whatever. And they usually do it in consult with me. I mean, we have a kind of a diverse group of older, newer, bigger offices, boutique offices. And so we do kind of put it together like that. This year we have another seat. And so it's a pretty diverse group. There's several new people. We want to have some older retreads. I don't like that word either because it refers to me. And then you definitely want some new ones and some people that are showing some interest and some promise in other areas of the association too. But I love Trisha's point about connecting it more directly to your strategic plan. Thank you, Trisha.
I think that makes a whole lot of sense. And I wonder if there's some, I think I'm assuming that the locals like the autonomy that you have to send who you want, and create your own structure surrounding that. But maybe there is something we can offer in terms of, here's a template suggested like model or things like that to really give, I guess, at the very least, the local associations more food for thought and encourage them to consider how to be more intentional with those selections, because it all matters who's at the table, right? And the outcome is vastly different depending on who those people are and their perspectives. Well, you let me answer, you let me ask all the questions I intended to. If there's anything additional anyone on the panel wants to add that we missed, or if there's anyone in the audience who wants to ask a question, please just feel free. This is open town hall now.
So I have
I'd like to ask a question of the panel, and it has to do with Sylvia's comment in the chat. So some of the smaller associations are having a really hard time getting people to step up. And Sylvia's in Tehama. She has a president who is about to serve his 5th non-consecutive term. And I know there are other people that are recycling their leadership. Does the panel have any suggestions for smaller associations about how to get people more involved in leadership? They have an advantage over really kind of all of your size associations because they know every single person, right, on their board, and their kids go to school together and they've been to their, siblings' weddings and all of that. Any suggestions for them to get people to step up?
I think a lot of it, if I can, Peggy, one of them would be just to, and I don't know, Sylvia, if you're already doing this, but to get out into the field, go to those brokerages and meet with the agents. If the board is small enough, you can do it frequently. Go to their weekly or monthly staff meetings, sit with them, answer questions, just kind of hang out and create that relationship, and then do it frequently. I love going to brokerages. I absolutely love it. And unfortunately, I don't do it as much as I want to, only because it's very time intensive, right? You have to drive around and you have to call an office manager, invite yourself into the meeting, then you have to drive there. But it always helps you want to bribe them with bagels or donuts or that sort of thing. And they welcome it. They almost always love to see you there and just to talk to them. And so when they see you coming, they recognize it. And just say it and say, we're building a bench. I'm looking for who is going to be, you don't need to, apply pressure saying, I need someone right now. You can say, I would be interested in having someone in 3 years. Who is that person? I think, my president 5 years from now is sitting in this room. Is that you? Maybe, or is it someone that would be cool. So maybe call me, I'll buy you some coffee, we'll talk about it, or I'll just come back to this meeting again next month just to check in with you guys and see what's going on.
Patrick.
There's one group we haven't touched on today, and after the leadership meetings in Chicago, my president-elect and I stayed for the YPN Advance, I think it's called. And our YPN committee's been struggling, so we want to get it kind of back going. So that I believe the original intention was to get younger people involved in leadership, and so we'll be using that in the future. But I think one of the things that something else that hasn't been talked about here today is where the agent is in their career path. In the past and maybe even now, a lot of times the realtor profession is maybe a second profession or a third profession, or even a part-time. The other thing is that when you're talking to leaders, you need to be really aware of where they're at in their family situation, as far as and I want to be really careful how I word this, but if somebody just had a baby, they're probably not available to donate or contribute a bunch of time. So I think you just need to keep that in the back of your mind when you're tapping people for future leadership. So my daughter just is being tapped for leadership at PWR, and it's like, Dad, I'm okay because, you know, they're both in high school and they're going to be off to college by the time I'm like, okay,
You bring up a really good point and that is a factor, that it has to work in their personal world too. And which is why I think during the pandemic, we were really giving a lot of thought, especially at the state level, do we need to do 3 weeks out of the year for business meetings and take people out of their, personal lives to come? There's different people depending on where they are in their journey in life and in their career, who can or can't dedicate that kind of time. So that's definitely a consideration. Tricia, you had something I think you wanted to say.
My question would be, do you understand the why that people don't want to step up? Because, Patrick just gave multiple reasons why someone would not want to do it. So I'm a data geek. I want information, then I want to analyze it, then I want to see what the trends are, then I want to create the solution based on the trends. Because sometimes we don't know the problem that we're solving. We think we're solving this problem. I don't have anyone coming in as a new president. And actually the problem might be what we're asking of the new president is too demanding for most members of the association who might qualify. So I think it's go back to the fundamentals of understanding what's not attractive about people stepping up. And then I think some of the solutions will present themselves. Maybe it's too many board meetings. Well, do we need to have a board meeting every month? Could we do one every other month? Is it, I have to go to too many events? Well, do you have to go to the events? Maybe there are only some events you have to and the rest are optional. So build a kind of presidency that will be attractive to more people.
I really like that. And I think even you may, through that investigation or research, may even find that it's even broader than just like the time commitment. It might be a cultural issue that they don't really feel like they belong. And so it could lead you down a good path to kind of identify and look at maybe bigger, broader pieces of the organization that need to be changed. Sylvia, you have a question, and then I know we're right up against, I don't know how, I guess we all are good at talking a lot, especially me. So we're almost at 11, but Sylvia, we'll take your question and then we'll wrap up.
So one of the things that we've found difficult is that we only allow 4 people from one office to sit on our board. And we're at a max for this one particular office. Well, unfortunately, we also have a rule that states that you have to sit on a committee for a year. And so those 2 challenges together have really limited who's been willing to step up. And we've had people from this office inquire about joining our board, but again, we're limited on that side. So the people that do want to move in and get involved, we can't quite allow it because of the other issue of the amount of people that we already have on our board from that particular office. So that's been kind of the biggest challenge. And then I know, like our leaders today speaking, different family circumstances. So that has held back the other half of the group, which has created our past president to have to step in again and do another term that he doesn't really want to do, but doesn't want to walk away because we need somebody. So I appreciate the advice that you guys are giving today. And if you guys have any more, please reach out to me. I appreciate it.
So it sounds like you need to change the qualifications. Otherwise,
We have it.
poor president's going to have to be there 10 years from now.
I agree.
So at my board, we have similar requirements. I think we can't have more than 3 of one brokerage on the board. It only applies to the board, not to committees. And we do require you to sit on a committee before running for being eligible to run for the board. So we still have that rule. I mean, it just is what it is. I would suggest though that whatever you do, this is not a problem you're going to solve this year, and that's not a bad thing. I think it will be, and your incoming number 5 president maybe will welcome this. Create a 3-year plan, right? Starting today, going out 3 years. At the end of 3 years, what's the outcome you want? Maybe you want to have more diversity. Maybe you want to have more offices. Maybe you want to have whatever it is, the flavor of your board you want it to look like. So you have that bench, and it'll probably take a good 2.5 to 3 years to build that bench. And if everyone knows that going in, they'll be like, okay, we're good. So we know we have this, plotting set of steps for everyone just to follow between now and, 2 years, 3 years out from now to get there. And so that won't create any expectations that you have to have something done today, because it will take time to build that bench. And by then, I think maybe you'll see some good results.
Thank you. Thanks for that thoughtful question and perspective, Sylvia. I know we have a couple questions that I'll just try to help wrap this up. And I know Lisa asked who's available to do board orientation and where do we find this information? Board orientations look different from association to association. My best advice, because there's not only one way to do it, is to ask your fellow AEs and the community that you have, either on the Facebook page that you all have, or even better, your neighboring AEs. It's a great opportunity to reach out and ask if they'd be willing to share some of those templates. I think there's probably some best practices that we didn't get into here on board orientation, but that might be a whole nother session. And then Sarita asked, how do I get my board to agree to change the requirements, because my president just wants anyone who has a license but are not involved in real estate at all? I think that this is a loaded question because it has a lot to do with their culture and what your history has been. I think, like I said in the beginning, having your own directors vote themselves off the island is a big ask if you've had, a history of never having term limits or letting just anyone and having not that deliberate, eligibility piece, or some of these strategies that have been talked about today. So I think that I love how you're all asking questions, and if you want to stay, and Peggy, I'll let you decide this. We can continue on, or if we want to wrap up. But Sarita, I think that it takes some time, some change on the board. If you have the same board over and over, they're probably less likely to change those requirements and term limits, but getting some new people in little by little can kind of change that culture and dynamic of the board. Peggy, I'm going to ask you how you'd like to proceed here.
I would say let's keep going as long as there's questions, and anybody who can't stay can bow out.
Perfect. Okay.
There was a question from Christy about how to get responses from the membership who aren't interested in leadership. One-to-one marketing, one-to-one conversations is the best way to get information or communicate a message. Maybe if this is important to your board of directors, your president can ask your board of directors either to talk to 10 members, to go to a marketing meeting, but I think you have to be strategic about it. So one of the things we've done in the past in order to get member feedback in an area where we weren't getting feedback was the president deputized every board member and said, at every meeting, between meetings, I want you to go out and talk to members about X, Y, or Z subject, and then bring that input back. So it's more labor intensive, but if you're not getting responses back from social media or from surveys, then send those directors out into the field, send the committee chairs out into the field and have them bring the responses back.
One of the things that we do kind of along the same lines is, as part of our marketing plan for all of our events, and we obviously, having as many councils as we do, we have a lot of events. Some are fundraising, we do a lot of fundraising, some are educational, and some are just purely social. But part of our marketing plan is to ask everybody to bring a friend. And that's been pretty successful, because then somebody who's not been to an event, no matter what kind of event it is, will get a taste of what we do, how we operate, that our events are fun, or if it's educational, that it is educational, and sometimes it's just the purely social ones. As we know, realtors can be very social. And so sometimes it's just that, but we really encourage somebody to bring somebody who hasn't been to an event before.
Love that. These are all, you have, between the three of you, you all have, I think you have it figured out, or I think you gave a lot of ideas and strategies today. So thank you for that. I think with that, I'm going to hand it back to Peggy. I just want to thank Tricia, Patrick, David. I just respect and admire all of you and how hard you work and how committed you are to this topic. So thanks for sharing all of your magic sauce secrets with everyone today. And with that, Peggy, thank you for organizing this, and I'll hand it back to you.
Absolutely. And thank you to all the panelists and Emily for moderating and everybody who came. I think those of us on this meeting are the only people who are not on vacation right now, because this is like vacation time, right? So thank you for all of you for your time, and thank you everybody for being willing to be open and share all your best practices. I will be sending out a follow-up email later today. It'll have a link to this. I'm sure people will want to watch it again, and for anybody who couldn't attend, we'll be watching it also. So thank you, everybody. Thanks for staying over. And again, thank you all for being willing to share.